I've spoken to both Stuart and to Jimmy, and as you mentioned, they're obviously disappointed, angry, and they've Stuart in particular has voiced that quite publicly. And you'd expect that. I've got a huge amount of respect for both of them, but at no point it's been made very clear as well that no one's saying that this is the end for them. And the guys that are on the tour have got a real opportunity to step into some slightly different roles, to take those opportunities, to grow themselves as players within this team, and to strengthen what could be the backbone of this team moving forward. And it'd be great to see Stuart and Jimmy very much in the mix at the start of the summer as well.
That's Joe Root on a now very familiar subject, which is not going to go away. As much as probably the England management and some of the players probably would like it to go away, Harmy. They'd like to start concentrating and focusing on themselves. But, it's just a subject that is going to rumble on, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately. And you look at the group and the group that Paul Collingwood and Joe Root are going to have in the Caribbean, two sides which are in transition, in my opinion. I think the West Indies side probably is there for the taking more than any time that England have ever been to the Caribbean. And all the talk has been Broad and Anderson, and I've been very vocal. I don't think it's the right decision, but it's gone now. They're in Antigua. They're ready for the warm-up game. And we have to look beyond that, because no matter what anybody says, whether it goes good or bad or indifferent, there's no Broad or Anderson, and the time is going to have to come eventually. And I look at what's happened and how they've picked their group for the warm-up game, and all this looking at somebody else and giving somebody else a chance. I'd have been fine if they in the 12, both Mahmood and Fisher were in it. But unfortunately, the same groups that lost us the Ashes are going to be on a flat pitch in the Caribbean with an oldish ball. And I think there's going to be a lot of talk of Chris Woakes leading the attack after what he did from 2015 onwards in the white ball game, after Jimmy and Brodie had gone from there. I think it's a different type of game for Chris Woakes to sort of go in and lead the attack on that. I think there's a lot of onus now on Mark Wood to stand up in these 3 test matches, because England are going to put a lot of pressure on him. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Mark Wood to get to the 2nd of June, and the body he's going to be in between now and then. There's going to be an awful lot asked of him to then go again. So I think England have got to manage Mark Wood so delicately. It's going to be interesting to see, because the IPL aren't going to manage him. They've paid a lot of money for him. He's going to be flogged. And I mean flogged, it's IPL, it's 4 overs. But he's going to be asked to bowl a lot of overs, intense overs in the IPL. You're going to need him for the 3 test matches here. And, we unfortunately, the track record of Mark's body. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Mark Wood now Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad's not there.
In the past, Harmy, when captains have had decisions made about the composition of their team, they have not stopped themselves from saying, well, there's a selector and there's a selection committee, and they distance themselves. Joe Root hasn't done that. Is he just being diplomatic, or do you think he had a say in their omission?
I think he's being diplomatic. I think that's the argument and the problems that a lot of people seen. It's Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Silverwood, and Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Root. And I think that dynamic wasn't really what was needed for the red ball cricket team that England have at this moment in time. So Joe's just being diplomatic. He's a bit like Sir Alistair Cook. He's the perfect ECB man because he's the best player by a country mile. He's a perfect ECB man because he doesn't want to rock boats. He knows he's got to deal with people that's inside the system. Deep down, I'd love to know. I think we got an idea when he was leaving Australia that he said, I would like to have Broad and Anderson in the Caribbean. But obviously that's gone on deaf ears. New people are in charge. New selection panel were going, and that hasn't happened. So whether Joe, can he come out and say anything different? I don't think he can. I think he's got to get on with the job in hand, which is to hopefully score runs. If Joe Root scores runs in the Caribbean, England have got a great chance of winning, because I don't think the West Indies are very good at all. They're a good side in their own back garden, but I don't think they've got a side that they've picked. England should beat them. For me, they should beat them, even without Broad and Anderson.
Harmy, the thing is, both teams are statistically weak batting lineups. The West Indies have only got Nkrumah Bonner, who averages over 40. Everybody else averages closer to 30. in that batting lineup. So if the Anderson and Broadless attack do fill their boots and come back with lots of wickets and bowl the West Indies out cheaply, which I think is a chance of happening, will England really have learnt very much?
Yes, I think they will have learned that how the dynamic works without the two great bowlers, because eventually they're going to have to find out. I think it's so disrespectful to Stuart Broad to put him in the with the bracket of Jimmy Anderson as close to retirement age. You know, Stuart Broad's 35. Jimmy Anderson, I know Jimmy's a one-off. You know, the level of wickets he got from 35 onwards was more than I think nearly anybody else's career, or as much as anybody else's career. I think Stuart's still got a little bit more to give. Will it have learned too much? They will have, because they'll learn to bowl 90 overs and try and take 20 wickets in a day or in a test match without having Broad or Anderson in the group. But like I said before, it goes back to the Brisbane scenario again. England are going to go into the first test match against Antigua with the same attack that they went in from Brisbane. So from a learning point of view, the only way they can do that is by bowl better and get runs. If they get runs, I still think they've got a bowling attack, even without Broad and Anderson, that could take 20 wickets on the Caribbean surfaces to win. Now, what I would like to see is fact-finding mission that Sir Andrew Strauss and Paul Collingwood and James Taylor have built. The two players that should have been in this warm-up game, they should have had a look at Mahmood and Fisher. Now, I had a little look at Mahmood in the T20s, and he didn't do very well on these surfaces. We should have been having a look at Fisher. We should be having a look at Overton. And we're saying, right, if we're going to try and find out what's going for the future and going forward, and how can we be better overseas, then there's no point picking bowlers that haven't performed overseas for you when it comes to result-winning matches, because these are the ones that went to Australia, and we didn't fancy Craig Overton. He didn't play in a series where we lost 4-0. So I think they're the questions I want asked, and I want to learn when they come back on April the 1st.
All right, Harvey, just before we move on to Joe Root's move to number 3, Mark Wood said that Broad and Anderson had texted the England bowlers and said that they were available for, just available. I suspect that the idea was not for Mark Wood to make that knowledge public. And I don't really have a problem with it, although there are some, possibly including you, that say that that's not their place to be texting the bowlers offering advice.
Not really. I'm like, well, if they're on a fact-finding mission trying to find out what they can do with that Broad and Anderson, it's no point when the times are in trouble, they'll go back to Broad and Anderson, because if that's what they're going to do, or if that's what they're trying to say, then Broad and Anderson should be there in the first place. So it goes back to the whole conversation we've been having for the last month and a bit since the tour's been picked. So it's a lot of pressure for me on Mark Wood. We've now got to look away from the fact that Broad and Anderson aren't there. And we've got to find out if the new bowlers that's in the group, and I put Craig Overton in this because we've never seen him for quite a while. For these test matches, these 3 test matches, Overton, Mahmood and Fisher, we've got to find out if they can play cricket for England or not, because we are eventually going to have to say it off. Broad and Anderson are eventually going to have to say that enough's enough. I'm finished. I'm retired. I'm gone. And that's what England have to find on this 3 test match series. And if they keep picking Wokes, Robinson, Wood and Leach like they did in Brisbane, then what are we learning?
All right, let's remind ourselves about what Joe Root said about his desire even to move up to number 3.
I'm ready for that now. I've expressed in the past that I prefer batting at number 4, but I'm ready to take that on now. I feel like I'm very comfortable in the way that I've been playing and performing over the last year or so, and I think it's the right fit for this team. I think that I'm the person to go and bat slightly higher up, and if we do lose an early wicket, support those 2 openers, show a bit of leadership responsibility, take that on, take the games on, and hopefully lay a bit of a platform for us to bat around. And I'm relishing that challenge. I'm really looking forward to it. In the past, I've probably looked at it in a slightly different way, and it's not really fitted me, but I'm a lot more comfortable with that now and at ease with that. And as I say, I'm looking forward to that.
That was Joe Root explaining his move up to number 3. It is sense of irony in many ways, because Root was pressured into batting at number 3 on a couple of occasions since even before he became captain, and now that he's had this record-breaking year at number 4, he's finally decided that he does want to move up the order. Is it purely to solve the number 3 problem? Is it his desire to try and do all he can personally to prevent the 20 for 2 syndrome?
Yes, I think that is one part of it. The second part of it would be to get another batsman, a young England batsman, into that middle order. Possibly, they think number 4 is the best position for that young English batsman. I thought that would have been Pope, but they've gone with Lawrence. So Lawrence to go and bat at number 4. I think the feel is whoever they've got, the next cab off the rank batting wise, can't bat at number 3. So unfortunately, Joe has to go to number 3. And now he goes up to 3. The pressure that's on him now, with his leadership, 1 win from 14, team's under pressure. You left your 2, great bowlers and confidants behind, as well as Buttler. If things don't go well for Joe Root at number 3, where does he turn to next? And that for me is the thing that question marks this decision, because the 2 things that were working were Broad or Anderson or both playing, and Root at 4. I can see why it's happened. I just don't understand why it's happened now.
You, as a career number 10, might not be the perfect man to answer the question, but if you are the captain, would you rather walk in at 10 for 1 or 20 for 2?
I don't think it really matters whether it's 10 for 1 or 20 for 2, because of it's who's going in. If he goes in, if he feels as though going in at 10 for 1, the ball is still in a position where that could knock him over. If it's 20 for 2 and we are now 20 for 2 consistently, and he's one of the 2, then it's not the right decision. If he goes in at 20 for 2 and the ball, there's another 4 or 5 overs gone or 6 or 7 overs gone, it's a little bit easier for him to get him in and get him going, then it doesn't really matter 10 for 1, 20 for 2 for me. It really doesn't. It's about how he comes through that initial period. If that period's going to be harder at 10 for 2, England don't get 150. It just tells you our middle order just doesn't get 150 to 200. And that's not being facetious or anything like that. That's me being realistic, that in the last 18 months of cricket, when we play and Joe Root doesn't get any runs, England cricket team doesn't score 200, you can have Broad Anderson in their prime and we still wouldn't win games.
We're joined live from Antigua now by the Press Association's Rory Dollard, who is covering England's one and only warm-up match against a President's 11. Rory, I have so many questions to ask you. What did you make of the composition of the team that was named, and is that a fair reflection of what you expect England to field in the first test?
Hi, Manners. Hi, Harmy. Yeah, I suppose with one warm-up match, you would have to expect that if you name a 12, you're looking to take 11 from that 12 and take it into the test match. In terms of the sort of composition of that team, it kind of is at odds a bit, isn't it? With the messaging and the chat about, I suppose, removing Broad and Anderson out of the equation to empower the likes of Matt Fisher and Saqib Mahmood and maybe let them spread their wings a little bit. The decision to bring Matt Parkinson into the fray. Well, all those 3 guys are going to be shuttling drinks the next 3 or 4 days. So it does seem, I suppose it seems a bit conservative from a selection panel that's just thrown away best part of 1,200 test wickets.
You mentioned about the selection panel. How's the media looking at this from that point of view? Is it giving them a free hit because it's an interim selection panel, but they made some big bold calls, and then looks like they're going to go back to the first test match, which the old selection panel picked out in Brisbane. If this goes wrong, where do you lay the blame? Because is it Strauss? Is it Collingwood? Does it harm Collingwood's chances of getting the coaching job?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's a free hit, because I think when you've got a test record like England have got, the free hits are long gone. It's about getting results on the board every time they get onto the pitch at this stage. Where does the blame lie? Well, I suppose somebody needs to, when we get to the test match, to the first test at the Sir Vivian Richards Stadium, someone needs to own this team and own this selection. And whether that's Joe Root, I think it probably has to be, because if we look at the people who are in positions of power, Strauss has made a big impact, I suppose. Paul Collingwood's here, but both of those guys have the word interim next to their job title. As far as Joe Root is concerned, he is the test captain, ongoing, and for as long as he can keep onto it. So while those guys have a big voice and a big say, presumably, Joe Root's the guy whose record is up for grabs and whose future is really under discussion. So I would like to think that the 11 he puts out on the pitch carries his fingerprints.
And the surfaces are going to play on, we're looking at Leach is going to have to play. So, England aren't going to go in with four seamers. They're going to go in with a spin bowler. Decided not to go in with Parkinson after leaving, basically saying about Bess that the West Indies play off spin very, very well. And then they want the ball to go away from the bat of a right-hander naturally. Again, you're looking at the decision not to play a Fisher, a Mahmood or a Parkinson in this warm-up game. It's like it's not so much who makes that decision, but how that decision's been made. And it probably does fall down to Joe Root because the interim that you said. But looking at the wickets that you're talking to the media in the Caribbean, what are we expecting the wickets? Are we going to be expecting wickets that are going to turn? Because that's what, the slowness have been in recent past.
Well, I think Antigua is the likeliest. That's the impression we get, is that Antigua is the likeliest to take spin. But beyond that, I do think the Cricket West Indies, if you look to the last time England were here, and if you hear Johnny Grave, the CEO of Cricket West Indies, they have tried to put a bit of pace back in. And I think it did. I think it did happen to some extent last time. The ball came through a bit quicker. Mark Wood, of course, you'll remember, Harmy. Mark Wood was making it sing at St. Lucia. So there is a bit more pace. But, this first test does look like the one that might take a bit of turn. But I don't know whether England feel confident to win a game with spin. It's been a long time since I remember that being the case.
Rory, I wanted to ask you about Ben Foakes as well. You'll have all the numbers, I know, on the tip of your tongue about his first-class batting average and just this kind of weird perception that, that he hasn't played more than 8 Test matches and he's 29 years old because he's not a very good batsman. So I wanted to ask you about that, but I also want you to give us a description of life in Antigua. What are you in a bubble? Are the England players in a bubble? Is it restricted, or is the West Indies is Antigua fairly COVID clear?
Sure. Let me start with Ben Foakes. I'd be a big advocate of Ben Foakes. I think in a team that's lacking world class specialists, he fits that bill. In the job that he has chosen, in the niche that he has carved out for himself, he is an elite cricketer as a wicketkeeper. And I don't really buy into the idea that he's not a good batsman. I think the record he's got, if you look over the last 5 years of specialist batters who've been tried in this England team, I think he stacks up top 1 or 2, to be honest. And if he was first dropped after 5 tests, I think, after that man of the series performance in Sri Lanka, I think if someone like Ollie Pope had sat with that record after 5 tests, he would have been having 2 years inked into the team without a question being raised against him. So Ben Foakes is a pretty resourceful cricketer, I think. And if we look, he sort of made an accidental one-day debut in Ireland because of various teams needing to be shuffled around. He sort of was accidentally handed an ODI debut, bailed him out of a hole, was man of the match with the bat. Pretty decent cricketer. I think he has earned a bit of a run. In terms of Antigua, I've only been here just 24 hours, really, but certainly the impression I get is that having just got hold of tourism again after 2 years, which is the main industry on this island, having just got hold of it again, they're pretty keen to keep hold of it. And that, if that means a little bit of carefulness and a little bit of mask police, I think we'll be getting a bit of that over the next few weeks. Equally, there's 365 beaches on this island. I reckon you can find one where you can take it off and enjoy yourself. I don't think that'll be too much trouble. For the England guys, they're going to be pretty restricted, I think, in terms of where they're allowed to go. I don't expect them to be out in the towns posing for selfies with the Barmy Army, but the results that they've got on hand, pretty decent. I reckon they'll all be pretty happy to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait for one of them 365 beaches to get on, but unfortunately, I think I'm going to be in one of them bubbles as well. When I get there, Rory, I just want to pick you up a little bit on the Foakes. I'm not going to play devil's advocate because I believe this, and I'm not having a go at Ben Foakes whatsoever. But you talk about Ollie Pope, talk about batsmen, thinking what a fantastic batsman he is. He can be. He's played 21 Test matches now, so his results don't match that. But I think there's something in there. We talk about wicketkeeper batsmen. We've just had a batsman just get 100 who wants to keep wicket in the Ashes. And that is Johnny Bairstow. Johnny Bairstow's problems came when Josh Butler took over the gloves, just short of the West Indies land. The last time we were there, he was averaging 40. In my eyes, in my hat, I think Johnny Bairstow should keep wicket bat number 7 and Ollie Pope would be in the side. because I believe Ollie Pope's a better batsman than Ben Foakes. But I get that Ben Foakes is sometimes have a harsh deal. So is that a valid argument from my side saying, well, I think Bairstow should be 7, Pope should be 5, and Stokes should be 6, because that, for me, gets better batters in the side.
That doesn't sound like a cranky point of view at all. There's plenty of logic to be had with that. It does feel slightly bizarre that we're in 2022 having the Bairstow debate, because it feels like we've been having that for most of my professional career in this job. I feel like we've been discussing Johnny, gloves, no gloves, 3, 5, 7. It's kind of a take your pick on that one. But yeah, that'll be a fair way to stack up this 11. I think long term, if they could get several years out of Ben Foakes, I'd be happy with that. And whether Johnny has got that many years in terms of a full cycle, a 4 or 5 year cycle, I don't know. But I'd be looking to get players who are really confident in that role. And Johnny did score that 100 as a batter, not a keeper. I'd be tempted to look at it that way. It sounds like we spoke to Ben Foakes the other day on Arrival in Antigua. It sounds like he thinks he's playing. He sort of said it's nice to come into a tour knowing you're number 1. So it sounds like we're heading down that road. But who knows? There's 4 days of cricket, and as an England fan, 4 days of cricket is a marathon, isn't it?
It is the way we bat.
Well, that's sometimes a sprint.
Rory, enjoy Antigua and enjoy Barbados and Grenada as well. It's a fabulous tour. I said that I thought it might be low scoring. Just very quickly, do you concur with that?
Well, I think the bowlers are better than the batters across the board, so that's pointing in one direction. What I do think is that means that a match-winning innings could be on the shorter side. England, if it's England who win a Test match, they could be looking at an Alex Lees or a Dan Lawrence or someone like that winning the game with a really hard 80, or a century could be real gold dust in this series, the way it's stacking up. So they have to maybe get that into their minds that batting, I know we've talked a lot about batting long with England and that being something they haven't done too much, but winning the match might not be digging in for 5 sessions in this series. It might be getting the only 85 of the match.
Good
Brilliant.
point.
Thank you very much indeed, Rory, cricket correspondent with the Press Association.